and welcome to Real Shame, once again, a movie show where we talk about our list of movie blind spots, movies that we haven't seen that we're trying to correct and watch those darn movies. My name is Andy.
I'm Adam.
And last time on the show, we talked about our first foreign film. It was Akira Kurosawa's Kagemusha from 1980. It concerns a dictator, or not a dictator, a lord, a Japanese lord who dies, who has a double take his place and try and keep up the ruse that he didn't actually die. 8 years after Kagemusha, we had a movie directed by Paul Mazursky with Richard Dreyfuss.
Bob, Ted, Allison.
Called Moon Over Parador. Monkeys, Ted and Alice.
Same director.
Yeah, same director. Called Moon Over Parador, where Richard Dreyfuss is an actor filming a movie in the fictional, Parador is not a real country, but it is a fictional South American country of Parador. He's filming a movie there. The movie wraps, but he just so happens to do a pretty darn good imitation of the dictator there. Sims is his last name. The dictator Sims. I don't even write down his first name. But his last name is Sims. That's all you need to know. He does a really good imitation of Sims. Well, wouldn't you know it, Sims actually dies in the movie. And luckily enough, Richard Dreyfuss has not left the country, even though the movie has wrapped. He stayed for Carnival to engage in the festivities with that. So they find him. They know that he does a good imitation of the dictator Sims, and they have him become the dictator Sims and keep up the ruse that Sims is actually still alive. So now Richard Dreyfuss has to learn to walk and talk and look like Sims, which we'll get into, and also has to take on the duties of just being a dictator. Complicating matters is he has a kind of a right-hand man played by Raul Julia, and he has a fiery girlfriend played by Sonia Braga. That is basically the plot of Moon Over Parador. It's a comedy. It's not, Kagemusha is very much not a comedy, although it does have some funny parts, but this movie is very much a comedy. I saw it when I was like 13 or 14, but I've not seen it since then, and you have never seen it.
Never seen it.
Wonderful.
You know, you should see him do you.
Do me?
He does the greatest impersonation of you.
No, I really don't.
No, he's
not
being
very good.
modest.
No, please, would you? I would really not. Let me be the judge, please.
So what would you like to say about good old Moon Over Parador?
So I do want to kind of bring it off at the beginning and talk
Clear
about
the air, yeah.
Richard Dreyfuss does darken his face in here, and there's a history in U.S. cinema, and probably global cinema, of white actors donning makeup to look like minorities and stuff like that. And of course, that is out of phase and very inconsiderate for those people of color. But, you know, it is a thing that has happened in cinema, and, you know, we can't ignore that happened. So the only thing we can do is hopefully learn from it and not repeat those mistakes again.
Agreed.
So just know that going into it, and if that's something that offends you, then that's perfectly all right, and maybe it's just a movie that you should skip. But that being said, sorry, I didn't want to be so dour, and I hope I wasn't.
No,
but
I think it's good.
Actually, I was nervous when I first put on the movie, but I actually thought it was a lot of fun. Like, I actually kind of enjoyed the movie. It's a silly, satirical, you know, just movie, and it feels very 80s in its sense of humor. And there's not a lot of greatness to it, but I laughed a few times, and I thought it was weird and strange, and I don't know. I did not hate my watching it, so I added some enjoyment from watching it. I probably would have enjoyed it more if I was 13 years old watching it, for sure, because it feels like that humor would have resonated more than older version of me. So you're very silent over there, so I'm really curious. What'd you think of Moons Over Parador many years later?
Maybe I was just in a bad mood when I watched it, but there's another movie that came out in 1988 that's a horrible film that I would much rather watch instead of this one, and that's Mac and Me. I would rather watch Mac and Me than ever have to sit through Moon Over Parador again. Maybe I was just in a bad mood, but I couldn't stand it. I couldn't stand it. I didn't think that it was funny. The funniest line, so it doesn't suffer from what I will call the meatballs disease, in that it's just not funny at all. There was a few parts that were okay, But the funniest line to me was Jonathan Winters when he's driving in the car and he's like, "Let me out, I gotta go take a dump," or something to that effect.
Kirby got so mad at me when I laughed at that.
Again,
I think that was hilarious.
Internally, I still am 13 years old, so I think stuff like that is funny.
And what I like to think is that he brought that character, he brought that trait to that character.
I totally
he's
think
like,
that.
he's like, you know what? I'm going to play
totally
this character with IBS.
I totally think that. And I love Jonathan Winters
because he mentioned it like more than once.
Yes, he does. Yeah, right. He does. He's a gassy guy apparently in that movie. But no, I feel like he did bring that to the role, and it's one of the few things about the movie that I actually liked. But I just didn't care for the rest of the movie. I didn't think it was funny. I didn't think that. I felt like, and it was adapted. Oh, I lost my notes here. It was adapted from a short story called "Caviar for His Excellency," which I've never read, and it was filmed once before in the 30s, called under a title called "The Magnificent Fraud." I've never seen "The Magnificent Fraud." No idea how similar it is to "Moon Over Parador," but apparently they're both taken from the same short story. But I feel like whoever adapted this screenplay had some particular beats that they wanted to hit, but the connective tissue to connect all those beats just wasn't really there. I didn't like it. For example, Paul Mazursky, the director of the film, and yes, he did do Bob and Carol and Ted and Alice, or if you want to call it Monkeys, Ted and Alice, as they do in Kicking and Screaming. Paul Mazursky did direct this film, and he's in the film. Because Paul Mazursky actually started out as an actor before he was a director. He actually was in Stanley Kubrick. His first film was Stanley Kubrick's first film, Fear and Desire. But he transitioned later into directing, but he almost always put himself in his own movies. He puts himself in this movie as Richard Dreyfuss's mother. He's in Drag, the movie, but they don't do anything with that. Like he kind of appears, and I thought there was going to be some more comedy with Paul Mazursky and Drag, but apparently they felt like that was it. Yeah. They're like, hey, let's put Paul Mazursky in, or probably Paul Mazursky was like, I want to be in Drag in this movie because it's funny. But then they don't do anything funny with it. They don't do anything funny with that material. The housekeepers and the people that work in the house, they immediately know that it's not the guy. Like they know that it's a double. They realize that because they've lived with this guy and know him well enough. They don't really do anything with that either. There's so much in the movie that, again, I felt like they wanted to introduce an idea, but then they do absolutely nothing with it. I wanted to see his mother visit, start to suspect that he was a double, and then one of the housekeepers like helps him out, like his butler, played by Fernando Rey. I wanted to see his butler maybe help him out, save him, and kind of wink at him, like knowingly, like I know who you are, but we like you, and so we're gonna, some kind of story ideas like that. But they just don't do anything.
Yeah, because they sit at the table and then they all say we know, and then that's the end of it.
That's it. They just completely drop that idea, and there's so much of that in this movie. Again, I think, like you said, it's kind of a strange and weird and wacky premise. There's so much promise with an idea with a movie like this that I feel like it's just completely unfulfilled. I do.
So I was reading on IMDb, and I don't know if you've read this, but apparently they had a different actress for his mother, and she couldn't make it.
Oh, really?
So that's why.
So Paul Mazursky was like, "Give me that dress. I'll do it." Well, maybe that's why.
Yeah. I'd like to see his movie remade better.
I would too.
But because I like the premise of like he's an actor that he feels like he hasn't got his due, that he's not loved in his time, and that he has so much talent. And then he has this role he can like really sink his teeth into. Yeah. And I would like the idea that if he was really, I guess he does a very good job, but it'd be even funnier if he does an absolutely terrible job. Mm-hmm. And they're like trying to
something, you're right.
They're trying to do damage control because he like maybe while he's giving his giant speech, he bows to the crowd and his wig falls off.
Something.
And they have to spread news saying, oh, the reason why that happens is because he had a bad haircut and he wanted to, I do think like the premise is ripe for comedy.
Absolutely.
And it needs to be revisited and done better and done more culturally sensitive way of doing it. But like I said, I knew going into this movie that I wasn't going to expect a whole lot out of it.
Yeah.
I knew it was just going to be one of those, like, I hate to say bottom of the barrel, but I knew it was just going to be like bargain bin kind of comedy. So I didn't have a lot of expectations. So I actually enjoyed a lot of it. I think Richard Dreyfuss's impersonation is laughable and not good, and it feels like his performance in this movie is kind of a death rattle of a career. Like this is like, you know what I mean? Like you're on your way out, right? And this is like your last hurrah. Like you have a bill to pay, you say yes to whatever's coming. He would go on, I think, after this to do Mr. Holland's Opus, which is great.
After this, yeah.
And Krippendorf's Tribe, which also probably not very sensitive to today's things, but when it came out in the 90s, I really enjoyed Krippendorf's Tribe. Right. I was a big Richard Dreyfuss fan back there.
Yeah.
Raul Julia makes Richard Dreyfuss look like a tiny, tiny man, like a child. I don't know if Raul Julia is tall, but I do know that Richard Dreyfuss is on the short side. Not to,
I think it's both. I think it's both. I think Raul Julia is 6 foot, 6'1",
but he's huge compared to him. And not to like, I'm not to.
You're height shaming.
Yeah, not
height shaming. We can't all be tall like you. No, so you bring up Raul Julia. I like him a lot, and I think he's a great actor. He unfortunately was taken from us too soon because he died after he made Street Fighter, which is a sour note to go out on.
But death rattle.
Yeah, I think he's fine in this. I didn't really have a problem with anybody's performances necessarily. I think he's fine in this movie. But that's another thing I didn't really get, and I was paying attention to this movie. I felt like I was, drunk or something like that. But I didn't really understand their kind of love-hate relationship. I know, he kept saying, I hate actors or whatever. But I didn't get why there was like a sudden turn to where towards the end of the film, he really did want to kill him. And then they introduced the whole kind of guerrilla warfare kind of coming in. That came out of nowhere, and they didn't do much with it. Speaking of like Evita, Maria Braga, who plays his girlfriend, ends up being the leader of the country. So move over her character's name is Madonna. Yeah. Move over actual Madonna, who would play Evita in Don't Cry for Me, Argentina. But Sonia Braga did it first. Yep. But I like Sonia Braga in this film. I didn't really buy them kind of falling in love. Once they meet, and she really, once she finds out that he's a fake,
she's on board.
It doesn't take anything. She's just like, yeah, I'm in.
But I think that's because they're trying to make her go to Florida, and she doesn't want to go.
Yeah.
So she goes to sleep with the general ambassador, whatever that guy Sims to make it to plead her case that she doesn't need to go.
Yeah.
And then she finds out it's Richard Dreyfuss, and then she's like, oh, I can actually parlay this into staying and stuff like that. So
I can concede that. Okay, I see what you're saying.
So, so I kind of bought that, and he found her attractive. So, for him, it wasn't a big leap to kind of fall in love with her. I expected them to meet up in the ending, which is really interesting that that didn't really happen.
I wanted it to be more. I don't want to compare the two because obviously they're completely different movies. But I wanted to see something akin to like the little grandson in Kagemusha and how he really, really takes to this person who is not his actual grandfather, but somebody who's just playing a role. I mean, yes, Sonia Braga falls in love with Richard Dreyfuss, even though she knows he's not really the right guy. But I wanted to see, I don't know, more poignancy, like the people really fall in love with him and he really falls in love with the country. But basically at the end of the film, it's just like, all right, well, I got to get out of here. I'm sick of doing this. And he goes back home and they kind of talk in the moonlight and he gets back with his buddy and they go back.
They do the Casablanca thing.
They do.
And I think they even...
Raul Julia at one point in the movie says, we'll round up the usual suspects. And I was like, all right. And then how about how this movie is presented? It's a flashback. It's him telling a story to his buddies. I didn't really understand why they felt the need to do that.
And I was going to say that. I'm glad you brought that up because I felt like that took any of the risk, any of the worry out of it.
Takes
right?
It out. Yeah.
Like, because I knew like, oh, he gets out all right and stuff like that. So
nothing bad is going to happen.
Yeah, I like him interacting with his friends. Like, I think that's kind of interesting, and they're trying to do like New York kind of actor thing, which I don't get because I'm not a New York actor, but I think that's kind of cool. Who'd get is Adam Driver from Marriage Story. Him and Scarlett Johansson, they would totally understand those actorisms.
I mean, they could have had the movie start with him in Parador, go through the whole ordeal. Then at the end, he goes home and tells his buddies, and he sees because I get the feeling they did that so that he sees Sonia Braga as the leader of the country on TV, which is something you're not aware has happened until he sees her. And you see Jonathan Winters and his wife. His wife is played by Polly Holliday. Who was Flo on the Alice sitcom. That's probably her most well-known thing. But the two of them look back at the camera, and then he sees Sonia Braga, or Madonna as her character, as the new leader of the country. And then he just kind of walks down the sidewalk, and he's saluting and doing whatever. And it's just...
And he wears his hat weird.
Kind of anticlimactic.
Yeah, for sure.
I didn't really get the whole framing it as like a flashback storytelling. I'm fine with him talking to his actor buddies, but they could have just had that at the end and not start the movie with that.
I think if it was more straightforward, they would have done it better.
Yeah.
The music for the national anthem and for what Sammy Davis Jr. sings. By the way, Sammy Davis Jr. is in this movie. Crazy. Yeah. Oh Christmas Tree and Besame are the two songs played. Those perked my ears up when I heard them.
Yeah.
I think they're supposed to be funny, but they're not.
Yeah.
I don't get the joke on those.
I think Paul Mazursky called in a lot of favors because you've got Sammy Davis Jr. and his crazy eyes in this movie. You've got Dick Cavett, who interviews Richard Dreyfuss, or the dictator, very, very briefly. Yeah. Dick Cavett's in it. Ed Asner is in it on TV. As himself for 2 seconds. Of course, we mentioned Jonathan Winters. Dana Delaney has a very small role in this film as one of his actress co-stars. And Fernando Rey plays his butler. Fernando Rey, I know Fernando Rey because he's the villain in The French Connection, which I've seen like a million times. So I know him. And he's also in some Buñuel films, That Obscure Object of Desire, and
the Chiquita Banana Lady in there
Bourgeoisie. Too? Yeah, so I left her for last because...
Spoilers, sorry guys.
The lady is Maria Rosario Pilar Martinez Molina Baeza, or Charo, better known as Charo. Cuchi-cuchi. She's in this film. And again, she doesn't do anything. I mean, she's wasted. She's completely wasted. I get, Sammy Davis Jr., I thought it was just funny because you only ever see him when he's just singing a song, and they do interview him at the end. And Dick Cavett, they bring him in to do an interview. They should have done more with Charo. They should have done more with Fernando Rey. They should have done more with a lot of things in this movie. Damn it. But anyway, I like Paul Mazursky. I don't think every movie he did that I've seen is fantastic.
Makes me worried.
He's done some good stuff. He did Moscow on the Hudson. He did Down and Out in Beverly Hills. Bob and Carol and Ted and Alice. And then he's in 2 Days of the Valley. He didn't direct, but he's in 2 Days of the Valley. I really like that movie. He's acted in some cool movies. So I have nothing against Paul Mazursky. I just feel like this was a misfire from him personally.
I was very surprised when I saw that he directed it because I expected it to be like I'm going to say this, and this is spoiler for future episode. We're going to do Sky Captain of the World tomorrow in a future episode. And I'm not surprised that guy's only directed one movie, which was Sky Captain of the World tomorrow. So I thought the same thing about this movie, where I'm like, oh, this was just like a flash in the pan kind of director. So I was very surprised that someone with such a, I don't know if prestigious or long oeuvre, yeah, that's the word, would direct this movie. Is interesting.
One thing that I did write down, one good thing that did come out of this movie, aside from Jonathan Winters saying he had to take a dump, is it
still makes us laugh.
So that it does. So there are sayings that everybody knows, like a bird in the hand is worth two in the bush, whatever. But there are certain sayings that you usually only ever hear the first part of. So, a lot of people go around and they say, oh, he's a jack of all trades, or she's a jack of all trades. But if you say the full thing, it's actually kind of a backhanded compliment. It's kind of an insult, because the full saying is, he's a jack of all trades, but master of none, which means, they can do all this stuff, but they haven't mastered anything. So it's kind of a backhanded compliment. Similarly, people always say, oh, well, speak of the devil. But the full thing is, speak of the devil, and the devil appears. So it's a lot more sinister than it sounds if you just say, oh, speak of the devil. In this movie, the guy says, because everybody knows ignorance is bliss. One of the housekeeper people, or the people that works at the house, says the full thing, which I've actually never heard. Where ignorance is bliss, 'tis folly to be wise. That's the full saying. And I was like, oh, I did not know there was more to that. Now, I think you're fine with just saying ignorance is bliss. You get the gist of the saying just from that. You don't need to say "'tis folly to be wise." But I learned something new watching Moon Over Parador. So something good. Yes, it was worth it. Something good did come out of me watching this movie. That and Jonathan Winter's flatulence or desire to take a dump. Those are.
I was thinking about fan casting this movie. So I'm thinking the remake, we get Adam Driver, basically his character from Marriage Story.
Okay.
But for some reason, maybe it's a sequel to Marriage Story. So Noah Baumbach. Come on, how awesome is that?
Dude, that would be so awesome.
The ScarJo has his kid. He decides to go find himself, maybe start a theater company in a, Anglo-based society, maybe somewhere in like Russia or something like that. And, there's a dictator, and then, Adam Driver looks just like him, and then he decides that maybe this is the role of his lifetime. Maybe he can direct himself. Or maybe he finds the guy and has to direct him and how to be the dictator.
If Marriage Story 2 was a remake of Moon Over Parador, I think that would be amazing. Or some kind of extension of it. I think that would be amazing.
I'm all for this right now.
So I actually added a movie to my list because as I was watching this film, I realized that Sonia Braga, who is a Brazilian actress, by the way, not that it matters, but this movie was filmed largely in Brazil. Sonia Braga and Raul Julia were together in a movie called Kiss of the Spider Woman, also with William Hurt, which I've always heard is really good and critically acclaimed, and I've never seen it, so I added it to my list, and we can both watch it for the first time. I thought that would be interesting. Charo, I was just curious, is Charo still alive? She is. Cuchi-cuchi. She's still alive and still acting in fantastic films like Sharknado 5, which is her last credit as of a few years ago. Like, she hasn't done anything since Sharknado 5, but I think that was like 2017 or something like that.
Have the Sharknado movies ever got Richard Dreyfuss? They should grab people from the first Jaws movies.
I don't think he's hurting that much. He
did this movie.
But come to think of it, I haven't seen Richard Dreyfuss in a while.
I think he's like. Excuse me. I think no, because he did the Bernie Madoff movie, right?
Yeah, I forgot about that. I didn't see it. Yeah. I guess that's why I didn't.
Because I was thinking the same thing. Because I remember.
Yeah.
Fondly.
Well, he doesn't do a lot though. Now he is kind of semi-retired. All right, so 42% fresh.
Ooh, that's
and
better
47% audience score. 2 thumbs down from Siskel and Ebert. And Leonard Maltin gives it 2.5 stars.
So do you think if they Rotten Tomatoes revisit those reviews, you think they'll go down? For that director we talked about last week?
No, I think, honestly, I think people just like it more than I do. Okay. I think I'm a Moon Over Parador hater at this point. But it just didn't work for me.
You're completely over Moon Over Parador.
I just wish that it would have had more stuff done with the ideas that they presented. Yeah. And I just didn't feel like it was funny, really. So,
all right.
Unfortunately. All right, so that's Moon Over Parador for you. Moving on to our viewer question. This one doesn't really have anything to do, or maybe it does have something to do. If you've been to Brazil, if you've gone to Brazil and you've seen any of the locations where they filmed Moon Over Parador. Which, speaking of which, how many movies do they film in Parador? That seems to be a popular destination. Because they film a movie at the beginning and then that's how he escapes at the end. He's like, "Oh, my crew's back." Basically.
It's like there's tax incentives and all that kind of stuff.
I guess so, yeah.
They're constantly filming there.
I guess so. But so our our viewer question this week is: have you ever visited or gone and seen locations that were used in movies? So I will pose that question to you first. Have you ever gone somewhere where a movie was filmed?
So, I'm gonna do a quick recession.
Go for it.
I actually I was working in Hollywood. I worked on a movie that was actually produced in Brazil.
Nice.
It made me think of that. It was was it In the Blood? I think it was.
But did you get to go to Brazil?
No, unfortunately I did not. That's why I quit. No.
Damn it.
I wish I did. No.
Okay.
It was In the Blood. They ended up filming. They were going to film in Cuba, but they ended up filming in Brazil because at that time Brazil had huge tax incentives for people to film out there.
Okay.
So I'm going to leave, and this is just me. I'm going to leave this off my list. I'm not going to talk about landmarks.
Okay.
As places for things because I've been to Brazil actually, and I've been to the El Cruzo, the giant statue of Jesus.
Okay.
that you see in like Bad Boys 2 and you see in a lot of established shows.
Yeah.
So I've been I'm trying to remember the name. I it's leaving me for whatever reason. And always with these things, as soon as we turn the camera off, I'm like, that's the name of it.
Oh, yeah. Should have said that.
So the answer to your question is not really. I have not been to a lot of movie locations. I know Alamo, which is a local Texas theater chain, they did screenings at different places. Like they did for like it wasn't the Royal Tannenbaums, but it was, one of the first... they've done movies like that where they show them in the place they are. And actually, I say that I've seen RoboCop at the Dallas thing,
City Hall. Same here. Yeah,
But to answer that question, when I was living in LA, I actually went on a couple studio tours. Mm-hmm. So I did the Warner Brothers studio tour and I did the Paramount studio tour, and I actually did the Universal studio tour. So I did all of them but Sony. And so I got to go behind the scenes and see like those streets where they film a lot of movies and stuff like that, and see the house. And like on the Universal one, I think we go down Wisteria Drive and all those famous places. And I thought, and when we were at Paramount, you got to see because it was originally like RKC or RKO, and it was Desilu and all that kind of stuff. So you got to see like, where Lucille Ball used to do like paparazzi photos and all that kind of stuff. And I got to go on different sets. I got to see, I think it was a Big Bang Theory set, like in between production. So I haven't visited a lot of actual filming locations, but did do those studio tours and really, really enjoyed those. I would really like to finish that, all my studio tours and go on the Sony one, and probably do the, I would really like to go to New Zealand and do all that Hobbit stuff.
That'd be nice.
Nice. That's because that's cool, and I'm a nerd. So that's kind of it. I don't know if I really answered that question, but
yeah,
tried to.
I think you did.
What about yourself?
Well, I mean, I agree. I may have been to some landmarks that were used in films, but I won't even talk about because some of them I'm like, wait, was that used in a movie?
Yeah.
I've only been on one studio tour. I was in LA last year and went to the Warner Brothers studio tour. Mm-hmm. So I didn't get to do the Universal one or the other ones, which
Burbank,
didn't have time.
Right?
But sure, I don't know. You lived in LA. I didn't.
I did.
But yeah. So I did the Warner Brothers studio tour. So I saw the stuff that was there. You mentioned RoboCop, like the OCP. Mm-hmm. So the City Hall. We're in the Dallas area. And City Hall was used as the OCP building in that movie. And then I used to pass by when I would ride the train. The high school is called Crozer Tech. It's all boarded up now, but it was that was used as the police station in RoboCop. And then I mean, if you've been anywhere, a little cough there. If you've been anywhere in kind of around the Dallas area, chances are you've probably seen something that was used in RoboCop. The other movie that I could think of that was kind of filmed in the DFW area, at least parts of it were filmed in the DFW area, is over the Fort Worth Water Gardens. That was used. That's been used in some science fiction films, like Logan's Run is used. That Water Gardens is used in Logan's Run, as well as The Lathe of Heaven, which is another science fiction film from like the early '80s. I'm trying to think if there's anything else around the Dallas area, but outside of the Dallas area. I don't think I've never specifically traveled anywhere just to see a movie location. If I have happened to have been in the area where something was filmed and saw it, I'm like, cool. But I've never specifically gone and actively sought that stuff out.
I remember Office Space was filmed in Dallas. And then I remember amongst my friends and the people around us, we were talking about where they filmed the location for the building and Office Space.
Some of it wasn't some of it in Austin too. I thought they used Austin. Some of it, I don't know.
Maybe. And the other thing that
Primer,
yeah,
Addison.
The other thing that kind of reminded me of, yes, Shane Carruth, awesome guy. He seems awesome. I don't know. I've never met the guy. The other thing that reminded me of it too was I was working in LA, and this was before I actually moved out to LA. I worked in the building where they shot some exteriors for the season finale for Heroes. Because if you ever watched Heroes, they're like these 3 black buildings, and they have this kind of orange helix DNA looking thing out front. And I worked in one of those buildings, so I'm like, I remember like this is the building. And actually, now I think about it, one of those buildings is the bank, and that's the bank in Heat. Oh, okay. I don't think it's the interior for Heat, but it's the exterior for Heat for the shootout and stuff like that.
That's cool.
So I mean, if you live in Los Angeles, I mean, everything's probably been a filming location,
Right.
right?
Right. So true.
So yeah, I guess I've seen a lot more than I thought I have.
I feel like I haven't seen very much. And again, if I happen to be in a place where something was filmed, I was probably just like, oh, cool, and then kind of forgot about it. So unfortunately, I'm probably boring that way.
I want to go to
can't think of a lot.
Nakatomi Tower, which is Fox Studios. I mentioned I wanted to go to. I'd love to go to New Zealand and see all the Harry Potter. Whoa, what a Lord of the Rings kind of stuff. Anything jump out to you, like film locations you'd like to visit?
I mean, not really. For me, it's just mainly I'd like to go to this country, but not necessarily because something was filmed there. I mean, I think it'd be cool to go to Japan. We talked about in Kagemusha. Obviously, Kagemusha takes place in the 16th century, but we related that to Sofia Coppola and Lost in Translation. I think it would be cool, to visit Tokyo and whatnot and kind of see the sights and sounds like he experiences in the movie. But I don't remember specific things or specific landmarks in the movie that are used, but something like that I think would be cool.
Well, if you want to host us in Tokyo, shoot us an email at Real Shame. We'll take this show on the road, guys. Come on, just shoot us an email. Let us know where you want us to shoot from. We'll set it up. It's a pretty easy setup. Any other questions?
No.
All right. Well, thank you guys. Like you said, if there's a question you want answered on the air, shoot us an email, realshame@gmail.com. Follow us on social media at Real Shame. If you're watching us on YouTube, thank you, or listening to the audio podcast, that's cool too. Like, subscribe, do all that kind of wonderful things because it actually does helps get the news around and helps spread the word of the podcast. And stay tuned next week when we pull another movie from our movie list of shame. And we'll see you next time, guys.